Hello, and today I bring you an interview with an extraordinarily inspirational young men's Catholic group from England. I met them on the March for Life last weekend when reporting for LifeSite News, and I thought you'd all like to hear about their inspirational mission to restore all in Christ in England. Vittorio, hello, thank you for coming.
Hello, pleasure.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, Sam and Joe and Theo. Got a full house tonight.
Pleasure.
Yes, good to be here. Thanks for having us on.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you, lads. Yeah. So, Vittorio, could you tell us what the name of the institution is and what it's all about?
Well, the name is the LFSPN, and it's a Latin acronym which stands for Legio Filiorum Sancti Philippi Neri, and the translation for that is the Legion of the Sons of Saint Philip Neri. Maybe we could get into why we're called like that later on. But what are we? Well, we're a young men's group, and our mission is very simple. It's to form young men so as to establish the reign of Christ the King. And that's it. I mean, our nation needs to be Catholic. People talk about it, and they talk about it because it's true. But lots of people can talk the talk, but perhaps don't do very much. And we're there because we want to do something about it. But in order to do any action, you need to have men. You need to have men of caliber that are formed in the faith, that are strong, that they know what they're talking about. And if you don't have the men, you won't be able to accomplish much. So the LFSPN really is for young men. And we do insist on it being for men because lots of people grow up in a mixed environment at school. They go to a mixed school. Needless to say, that's one of the biggest consequences. So one of the biggest consequences of that is, men who aren't very manly and don't stand for much. And that's what we're lacking. We're lacking men who stand for the right principles and are willing to live according to those principles. And the principle that we're concerned about is that by justice, our country needs to be Catholic. It's what God demands. And really, it's an act of patriotism to attempt to bring that about. So we do that in many ways, which I can go into, but we're here to form the young men. So in later life, we can do something for our Lord, really.
It's very interesting that you'd mentioned that practically every environment you grew up in now is now a mixed environment. Now, in the ancient distant past, when I was growing up, it was possible to go to the cadets, go to the scouts, which were Boy Scouts and actually had just boys in them, and go to all male environments such as the army, where you were in fact encouraged to follow the example of other men and learn about masculinity as well. And this is no longer possible in a mixed environment of the modern world. Now, I've seen I think that's an exceptionally appealing idea to young men. I think young men, not just in England, but everywhere, will find that appealing. Have you found that young men do find that appealing about your movement?
Well, we don't really talk about it because for a man to say, "Oh, isn't it just great to be with the blokes?" Sometimes,
especially with a task like this.
Yeah, but no, definitely. I think one political commentator used a word which I haven't heard before, gynocentric. That the world is now gynocentric. It's female dominated, and that's certainly what we find. I mean, I'm sorry to say, but even lots of traditional families, perhaps the woman has more influence than she might. And this is a big problem for men it's a big problem. It's a big problem that men aren't manly, but at the same time, we can't really criticize all these men in their 20s, 30s, 40s, but they've grown up in a mixed environment their whole life. I mean, it's sort of
yes.
A plus B equals C. So
it hasn't been an environment of their choosing, has it? And I think it's important to reflect on the moment that it seems such a radical idea to propose that you could grow up and experience your formation as a man in the company of men who would example that to you. that it might be a good idea for young women to be patterned on older women and young men on older men. Doesn't that make a sort of common sense, you might ask?
Yeah, and
look around you.
What's incredible is that you have to be taught to not think being around other men is normal. Yes, no, you have to be taught that being with only men is bad for your character, that you'll be socially misadjusted with the rest of society. Because the moment you're actually used to it, you realize how natural it is and actually how joyous it is. I think Fadian might have some thoughts on this particular topic.
Yeah, if I might add to this topic, so the emphasis, the reason why it's a men's group, okay, like you say, it's great to be with the blokes, all right? But it's not for our enjoyment. The point is the effect we want to have. Remember, there would be no point in having our group or putting any effort or time into it if it were just a social club. That's not what it is. The point is, again, the effect is the social reign of Christ the King, right? So then why a men's group? Why not a mixed thing? You know, why do we push the point it needs to be a men's group? Well, the emphasis isn't really us that puts it on it, it's God himself. If you look in scripture, um, the human race didn't fall when Eve took a bite from the apple. It was when Adam did. That's when the whole of the human race fell by sin. And ever since, all men do suffer from the sin of Adam, which is that effeminate inclination for just, whatever's happy wife, happy life, whatever's easy. Um, and that's what has led to the greatest tragedy in, yes, human history is that's happened since the fall. This continual decline and decline and decline into what we have now. And it was obviously it's more apparent now, but it is, yes, the rampant liberalism. So yes, the way to do that is men need to lead, basically. And the best environment is to get rid of all those distractions and really it's the sense of accountability when you're amongst your peers. You know, I don't think I need to explain to this crowd that the duties of a man in this world are different to those of a woman. And again, as is evident from Genesis, Adam was the head of Eve, man is the head of the wife. And if we want to rebuild, yes, families are a big part of that. But not just having the families, it's good families, families where the fathers lead, the husbands are proper husbands and they lead as well. But again, this isn't from a haughty or my high horse position. In the same sense, we obviously understand human nature. We understand we all have that sin of Adam, and that's why we need something like the LFSPN, so that, like you say, those old men, who are those old men we learn from, those are the saints. That's the spiritual aspect of the formation, the spiritual intellectual aspects of our formation, and the physical as well, but mostly the spiritual and intellectual. You've got to know and believe in what it is you've got to do first, and then you put your back into it, so to speak. So I think that's, in my mind, why we need to focus on, if we can get the men right in our spheres, then everything else should, in theory, fall into place if we follow our own doctrines and beliefs correctly. And that's a sentiment which we believe not just in terms of restoring the family, but also issues in the church, and then consequently, once you have that, that's the top stitch which will usher in, hopefully, again, Christendom and the social reign of Christ the King, which is our mission.
One thing that impressed me on meeting you at the March for Life was your thoroughgoing, concise and clear delineation of how the problems of liberalism have driven our society into a total moral collapse, absolute confusion. Now, I've been looking at your YouTube channel, and not only do you talk about the Catholic social teaching, but you also talk about Catholic action as well afterwards. And one of the reasons why I love the Catholic social teaching is because it basically is a recipe for the restoration of sanity to every area of our lives. It's a manifesto for spiritual and practical wisdom. Your Legion appears to exemplify that mission of the Catholic social teaching. So could you tell me something about what you've learned and how you would apply those teachings as was outlined in one of your video presentations? Does anybody else want to talk about that, the Catholic social teaching?
One thing I've learned with this, and again, we're a relatively new group. It's been going for a few years. I don't want. We can talk separately about the genesis of the LFSPN, but and again, from my own personal experience, I can tell you most of my life I've been a liberal. Without, most people are without knowing it. And then you learn that yes, this is nothing new. This isn't. Although our group is relatively new, the mission is not new at all. You look into, and then you have a sense. You have this inbuilt common sense uh, and not it, and if you have the desire for truth, you'll look into the history and see what it is we used to have, and then that makes you want to fight for it. Um, Obviously, where we are in right now in the 21st century, we're very far away from that, but that didn't happen overnight. It's been again a slow boil. So we do have role models in the not so distant past to look to. A big one which we've relied on heavily is the writings of John Rousseau. I think that's pronounced correctly, John Rousseau. I'm not very good at my
I think
French
so. I
pronunciation.
think so.
John Rousseau. Yes, he's written a very good book called Action, which is on this question, and you realise that yes, Catholic action isn't a new thing. He writes from the lay perspective, but really, again, you can see Catholic action not just in his writings, which would be something we rely on heavily as laymen, but also the encyclicals of the popes. How clear, crystal clear it is that the governments can't just do what they want. Um, Intellectuals can't just do what they want. Ideas have consequences. You can't just go and reinvent truth. And the popes are very good at showing how when you play with these ideas, what happens consequentially. I mean, great ones, you can just rattle them off. Pascendi, Morari Vos,
Oh,
Plus
Pascendi,
Primas, all
yes.
these things. Obviously, I'm not a scholar on these encyclicals, but you can generally know. And I'm not saying that everybody in this group has to, or every Catholic has to, but to know the principles of the bullet point list of here's what the Pope wants you to know, here's what the Catholic needs to know in order to fulfill this mission, and it's very useful. And really to try and navigate this world, to try and fight against the errors of our time, which any man who calls himself such should want to. You can't do it blind. You need to have a map, so to speak. You can't just go out into the wilderness, and it's these things that we don't have to do the thinking. It's all done for us. We just need to read it, understand it, and apply it.
And I think one point to add on to that is on the link between the theory and putting it into practice is that the social action of the Church of Satan's been going on. Well, it's been going on for a long time, but especially in the last 500 years. And so as Catholics, when we see these secret societies, these men who have lived and died unknown to the world, but have unknown to the world, have lost their soul, and yet have worked to destroy Christendom for generations and generations, have sought to destroy Europe. Europe, which 500 years ago was Catholic, it was completely Catholic, at least Western Europe was. We had the numbers, but a few determined individuals decided that's enough. We're doing it my way. We're doing it differently. And so they didn't have the numbers, and yet they managed to overthrow 1,000 years of, they've nearly overthrown 1,000 years of Catholic civilization. So that our enemies are acting. And I think for anyone who really loves his mother, the Holy Mother Church, how can he not defend her? How can he not try and defend her rights against those who are destroying her, want her to be rid from the world?
Inspirational, admirable mission. So, Sam and Joe, I've looked at your pledge and I found it very impressive. It contains an obligation to daily prayer, morning and evening, the Angelus, the Rosary, to basically physical and spiritual discipline as well. Could you tell me anything about how that's affected your life?
Yeah, well, in my opinion, it's affected it massively. If you look at something like sin, it's something that everyone struggles with. But through prayer, you can overcome it. Like anything, it's unbelievable. It's absolutely unbelievable. I was talking to a friend recently, and he was saying, "Oh, we need a Christian society." He was saying that's the only way we can really fix this is a Christian society. And I said, "Well, why don't you live a Catholic life?" And he said, "Oh, well, it's not for me, really." And I said, "Well, there's the problem right there. If everyone had your mentality, the country would be ruined. All you can do is do your part for yourself. And if everyone done their part, then the country would be fixed. All you can do is on an individual scale. You might think it's not much, but if everyone done it, the place would be fixed."
Yeah, like a lot of people, they'll say they believe in God, but not really. And they'll say, "Oh, England's a Christian country. We've got Christian values," but they themselves, they won't live by them, and they'll have a problem with, say, Muslims coming here and living their way. But if you're an atheist, a Muslim's probably closer to Christian values than an atheist is. So you can't really have a problem with Islam unless you are, say, a Catholic or a Christian yourself, and you're at least trying to live by the morals of the church or the Bible, the religion.
Well, I tell you, I was impressed again by meeting you both on the March for Life, because you told me that nearly 30% of Gen Z has been aborted by women, and also you also told me that it's the living that support the murder of the unborn.
Yeah, no one who's been aborted supports abortion.
That's remarkable. Doesn't this stuff sound obvious when you can say, yeah. I was struck by how, when you said these things, you can't help but agree with them.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking from that, I think in the 1200s to the 1800s or whatever, about 30% of children used to die before the age of 1 due to illnesses. So now they've got modern medicine. They've came over all these diseases just for people to kill a third of them out of convenience. So
convenience is the word. Convenience is the word.
Yeah, I mean, if you told one of these people 1,000 years ago, oh yeah, what we do now is we fall pregnant and it doesn't die by disease. We just choose to terminate it out of convenience. I mean, it's insane, really.
This is progress.
Yeah, progress. Yeah.
I think the only reason they support abortion is because it's convenient and it suits their life. If they get the football on a Sunday, you need to get an abortion. All the women would be saying it's absolutely evil. It's only because it benefits their life. They're saying it's good because it's convenient. Like in it itself, it's an evil act. But the only reason they say it's good is because it's convenient for them, because it makes their life better. If it made their life worse to get an abortion, they wouldn't say it was good.
I think more profoundly than practically anyone I've ever met, you've articulated what happens when you have a liberal modernist society that no longer values the essential value and dignity of human life given by God, but instead ascribes rights to people, but especially not to the unborn, just the living, and for their own convenience, their desires and personal advantage. I don't think I've ever seen that put better or more convincingly than you two have just now, and also on the March for Life. It's profoundly impressive and inspirational. And as with so much of the Catholic doctrine and the Catholic social teaching, it makes luminous and obvious sense when you point it out. Do you find that when you speak to people like this, young men like yourselves, that they listen to you?
Well, I don't know. I don't think they do. It's like if you walk into a pub and say you disagree with abortion, it's like walking into a wasp's nest. It's like getting attacked from absolutely everywhere. Like it's absolutely insane. The fact society's got to the point where to say it's wrong to kill your offspring, people think you're an evil person.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people, you don't think about it. You're just brought up with abortion's an option. You know, it's healthcare. It's a woman's right. So you've got all these women who've been brought up hearing it's a woman's right. It's a woman's right. So they're almost at the point where they don't actually care if it's a child, if it's right or wrong, if it's got a soul. They just think, oh, well, it's a woman's right. And that's correct. So it has to be right because it's a woman's right. They're not really bothered about the science of it or how many weeks or this. It's just a woman's right. So it has to be. And if you disagree with it, you're evil because it's a woman's right. It's a human right.
To speak to people today in England about Catholicism, they would see it as something alien, something that has nothing to do with the English or the way that we live or who we are. But I saw you, Theo, speak to that question. I would like to ask you about how you would respond to that, to say that England isn't a Catholic country and you have no business in trying to restore Catholicism here.
Well, I think the source of that is a lack of education in the common people of the country, where they can't really discern what the difference is between a Catholic and a Protestant. And nowadays, that in itself is probably true. There is very little difference between Catholics and Protestants. So how could you tell the difference? So what we need to aim to do is to show what the difference is, and then how society will change because of that.
And would you say that there is, in fact, a Catholic tradition in England?
Absolutely, yeah.
How far does that go back then?
Oh, I would say now probably from the 600-700s.
Theo, the Holy Grail. The Holy Grail, Theo.
Oh, well, there you go. So there's sort of small T traditions that the Holy Grail might have been brought to Glastonbury, and that one of the first churches might have been in Britain as well. So, you know.
Even I wouldn't have said that. I would have gone for like what you did in your video presentation, Edward the Confessor, Alfred, and so on. But no, the Holy Grail, what a banger.
And if I might add to that question, England being a Catholic country, where do we get our flag from? What does that red cross on the white background mean? It's the Crusades, right? The Crusades. What is the Crusade? It's a holy war waged by none other than the Pope. That's the point. England was eminent for this, and our own king spent their whole vast decades of their lives far away from England fighting for Christendom. And this is something that, yes, we should take as an absolutely patriotic sentiment, something we should be proud of, that we kept our continent and our civilization alive and virile and thriving and protected from foreign invasion for centuries and centuries. And this is something that people really thirst for now, because now we don't have that protection. Now that we don't have that unity under Christendom, look what's happening. I don't even need to tell you. I don't even need to point it out, because we all know what it is. And without that, again, it will only continue.
Well, I was interested to see that the motto of the LFSPN is the Instaurare Omnia in Christo, which was, of course, the motto that Pope St. Pius X took, didn't he? The restoration of all in Christ. Now, if memory serves me well, this isn't simply a recollection of the past, or, as some people say, an attempt to restore an almost imaginary bygone golden age. It was about the renewal of our civilization through Christ, through, if you like, through remembering the lessons of the church and applying them to our condition now. Would anyone here say that that's the case? That's the mission of your legion?
Well, I think that there's a parallel we can make between what happens to a soul when he's baptized, when he enters the church, and what would happen to a nation when it decides to become Catholic, a nation that is all in Christ. So, and this is a bit of philosophy, but or theology. So when a soul is baptized, of course, two main things happen in respect to the virtues. The first is that the soul acquires the theological virtues, of which he had nothing before: faith, hope, and charity. But second of all, the natural virtues of prudence, justice, fortitude, and temperance. He receives the infused version of those, so that these virtues are directed towards God. And the same happens with Christ on the political level. On the one hand, he founds a completely new level of virtues. In this case, the analogy is a society, which is the Catholic Church, which is supranational, is above all nations, and supernatural. It's of God. So he creates this new society of which we become members. But he also takes what we had already, which is the natural country, and he elevates it to another level. So, for example, folk dances and feasts become Catholic feasts and Catholic dances. Even St. John de Brebeuf, when he went to America, he took lacrosse, which was a game played by the Indians with dead skulls, I think, and he Catholicized it by making it a bit tamer and elevated it to a more humane level. So what is the LFSPN trying to achieve? Well, we're trying to produce men who either who will act as members of Christ's mystical body and further the mission of the church, but also raise the natural aspects of society, such as in our economics, in our politics, in the stock exchange, or lack of stock exchange, perhaps, in teaching, in all of these areas, and elevate it to a higher level.
Well, I think that's exemplary, and it's clear that you've understood and fully exemplify, I would say, the mission that I can see in the Catholic social teaching itself, which is a complete manual, if you like, for the restoration of human flourishing to national life in every aspect of our society, whilst pursuing the spiritual salvation of mankind in the church, the economy, our politics, the balancing of life towards human flourishing, or what was called in the Catholic social teaching, the common good. So do you have any ideas as to what we can do for Catholic action? What can young men do to help forward the mission of this church?
Well, ultimately, what we need to be doing is we're making everything Catholic. So, for example, there should be Catholic. I think they're credit unions, not banks. Um,
That's right.
there, we need to have Catholic versions of those, Catholic unions, Catholic schools, which don't teach the LGBT ideology, um, or put the girls in trousers. I might also add. Um, so anything you can think of in society is meant to be Catholic. And if it's not Catholic, then there's an area of Catholic action open. But right now, for young men, what can we do? Well, we need to study. People aren't thinking along the right lines. And what are the right lines? Well, they're in the encyclicals. And so with the LFSPN, what we do is every month or so, we put on a lecture in London in order to teach something very important to do with the faith, to do with Catholic action, to help the understanding. And what we also try and do with these lectures is get one of our own guys to give it, because that not only then gives something to other people, but it helps themselves practice to articulate their thoughts, practice research skills, and obviously anything that you learn yourself, you're more likely to remember. So we have these lectures to improve the understanding, but we've also started up a new aspect of our action up in County Durham, which, borrowing from Codreanu's legionary movement in Romania, we're calling it the Nests. And Fadian, perhaps you could say a bit about that.
Thank you, Vittorio. So yeah, tied into everything you're saying, you're right, the Catholic action is such a big field that you could discuss things over. There's political, economic, and social things you could talk about till the cows come home. But there's no point in really venturing upon any of those escapades without first having the men formed, and this is where the nest will come into play. And obviously, what unites us all, the thing we have in common is, again, we're not a social club; it's the faith, and the Catholic Church is the church militant. So, in a real way, you need to treat this in a soldier-like manner. You need to be professional about it. You need to want to get better. So you can't go on all the arduous missions, the hard missions, because the reality is, yeah, if you want to go and be a Catholic teacher and not fall into the same sins of liberalism and go be like a dead body downstream, it's going to require some strength, and that isn't something that's purchased with money, and it's not something that you can get overnight. You need to train. And just like a soldier would spend months, weeks, and months in basic training, we need to do the same with ourselves. So before we begin with any sort of real action, we need to look on the interior, and that's what we try to do with all of our members in the nests. And it's obviously very hard to do on your own. Actual monks wouldn't go into hermitage and become hermits without decades in a monastery first. So obviously that's why we have this group, and we strengthen each other. Edifying conversation, having just the brotherhood is very important for men to have that. So yeah, the building block, the foundation is the spiritual life, which is the true life of a man. It's the meditation, the reading, the prayer. Without our Lord, we can do nothing. So that's where it begins. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have things like what Sam and Job were saying, if you're going to be that indifferent man where it's like, yeah, I'll give it a go, but my own life, I'm not too fussed about removing it. I don't like all these people over there that commit sin, but my sins, they're all right. We'll keep those. No, that's not the attitude. It's all or nothing. So that's the spirit we cultivate firstly, because if we don't have that bedrock, anything we do later on isn't going to have fruition. So that's what we do with the nest, and then secondarily, what can we actually do? Again, yes, none of us here are going to change the face of the earth, the current status quo overnight. None of us have single-handedly the power to change move the Overton window in the direction we want it to go. But we can do what we can in our spheres. We can do things like learn how to altar serve. Where the body is, so shall the eagles gather. We can, help the mass to spread in that way. And in general, appeal to the local area. So obviously in County Durham, there's a large student footprint, and that's for our demographic, ideal target audience really. people at not only a very crucial stage in their life, but in a very adverse environment, shall we say, the university environment where it is probably the stronghold of liberalism. So one of the projects we're aiming to undertake in the next months, which we're training for in advance in the next weeks, is to go out and to appeal to these young people, and I can very much imagine that there's many amongst them who are yearning for something like what the LFSPN, not just what the LFSPN provides, but what the Catholic faith provides. I can attest to having been such a person myself not too long ago, and it's those people we intend to fish out. Hopefully, that's just one small example. But in general, it's again you could do the opportunities are endless, but the what is always tied to is obviously instituting the social reign of Christ the King, but then never ever for becoming complacent at all with the formation of the individuals. That's something that's always an undercurrent, because without that, anything else that you could do in terms of public apostolate, political lobbying, or any other sort of thing you could do in economically or anything like that, it's all going to be dust and ash. So that's in general is the scheme of the nest, which then also yes provides a local, easy to meet with, and frequently kept up brotherhood, which is something that's very much lacking in today's society for men, as we touched on earlier.
People today, well, everybody's aware of the fact that we're living in the middle of a deepening political crisis. And in the past, people have said, political theorists, that politics is really about friend and enemy. And it's about joining a political band that has your friends, that maybe reflects your lifestyle and your opinions, or perhaps the role-playing game that you want to play with your life. But nowadays, I think it's becoming clear that the political crisis is in fact the spiritual crisis, that they are one and the same, and that the choice comes down to good or evil, and that you have to pick a side. Would you agree with that? Would anybody agree with that?
Vittoria, do you want to go first?
Yeah. Well, of course, the modern political climate is between evil and evil. Pick your choice. But talking about politics
well
more generally.
Well said, that man. Well said. Yeah, it's about evil in different coloured ties.
Right. Two sides of the same shekel. But no.
Mr. Greenblatt, yes, now would be a good time for the phone. Yeah, not mine, no. No, wait till it's in his trouser pocket, yes. So it blows up his no-no place.
But politics in general, definitely. And this is how St. Ignatius wants us to view the world, as those who rally by the standard of our captain, Jesus Christ, and those who rally around Satan. And if you're not with one, you're with the other. And I think once you have that us and them mindset, you suddenly view the world correctly, because we're always taught it's not us and them. There's always something you can learn from others. Now, actually, when you make it about, okay, who's on the side of the truth and who's not, suddenly life becomes quite straightforward in a sense.
Would anybody else like to speak to any of this? Theo, have you got anything else to say before I wrap it up? Because I could listen to you all night, but I don't want you to be here all night and having a look at me. I mean, I don't like looking at me. You don't laugh, then say nothing. You know, well, I'm looking at you, Theo. I'm looking at you. You're always looking down on me. I'm going to bring my dignity stilts next time and look down on you and see how you bloody well like it.
I think Theo will have some interesting things to say to that, but I think one interesting thing is the point being, I think most people just don't appreciate how bad things really are. People are very quick to put faith in figures like Trump, figures like Farage, figures like insert next Zionist shill or whoever, the next fake opposition, conservative type. I don't like that word, conservative. We're not here to conserve a little bit of the truth. It's the whole 100% of the truth. So yeah, once you use the criteria that Vittoria just spoken about, the two standards, the full truth or none of it, Satan or Christ, and you look around and you see all of it is for Satan. All of it is bad. All of it in some way. I mean, look at Trump. Even Trump now supporting abortion in whatever way he does, even if it's in a small way. How is it something we can support as Catholic? It's terrible, and that is the crisis mode we need to perceive. It's like it's equivalent to being in a house that's burning down and pretending like it's not on fire. That's the way that most people want to live. They want to live like the frog being boiled alive, completely indifferent to its own destruction. That's something that really needs to be avoided because it's very prevalent, and people are very happy for their consciences to be quieted by the hope of a false opposition figure, a Farage, a Trump, to put their faith in. And it's something you can't avoid without being vigilant, and that's where the constant study is crucial.
I think that in terms of, yeah, go ahead.
I'm painfully aware that giants are fabled to eat little people. So if I don't let Theo speak, he might devour me the next time I bump into him.
Well, I think that most Catholics have heard of the Counter-Reformation, but not many of us will have heard of any type of counter-enlightenment, because there was no real movement to fight the Enlightenment. And so that is essentially what the LFSPN is doing in England, is fighting the ideas of the Enlightenment. The Church has already outlined what's wrong with Protestantism, but there's been few men who've outlined the errors of the Enlightenment and then fought against them.
Bloody hell, well said. Look, I have to try and talk to you lads on your own because it'd just go on all night. That was outstanding. Brilliant.
Thank you.
I mean, look. I will wrap it up very soon because I just wanted to say this. I've wasted most of my life reading about the history of ideas. Bore people to death about the Enlightenment philosophy and all that stuff. But that's absolutely right and well said. Few people say it so easily as well. The trouble is that when you listen to people who've done kind of academic stuff and that, they just bore you to death. They talk all four legs of a donkey and still persuade to go for a walk afterwards. But they've got a personality of a chair. But you don't, you speak well. You all speak well. You all come across really well, right? And honestly, I'm honoured. Really, I am. I mean, I don't like being nice to people. I'm not a nice person. But I'm compelled to say this to you because it's true, really. You're deeply impressive. Honestly, I love insulting people and crushing them, right? I mean, I would do if I could. But no, it was remarkable. What a brilliant thing to say. Is there anything else you want to say, lads?
So a bit about what you were saying about society being religious. I think now there's almost never been a clear, obvious right and wrong. So before, when religion was more prevalent, people would sin, but at least they were aware that they were sinning and they knew it. But now it's went that far off the deep end where people are proud of the sins and they walk around with signs saying, yes, basically I am a sinner, and there's nothing wrong with anything anymore. It's that liberal. There's nothing wrong. It's just completely insane. And I think society, a lot of people think religion's a thing of the past. But I think society has to have a religion because even before England was Christian, people always believed in a god or gods. But now, as soon as we become atheists in the last couple of 100 years, the birth rates have plummeted, divorce, abortion, everything's went wrong. And this society, this atheist society, is not going to survive. It's going to be bred out by religious people. So when they look back in 500 years, they'll look back and in atheism, it'll just be, people were atheists and then they died out. And then now we've moved back on religion, and then it'll probably be a cycle and it'll go atheist again and it'll die out and then cycle. So
can I add to that? So like you say, in atheism, it'll be a blip in history. So if it's not replaced by Christianity, it'll be replaced by another religion. So if we don't oppose religions like Islam with Catholicism, then they'll just take place. Because liberals, they don't have many kids, and when they do, they tend to abort them. So they're just going to die away. And Muslims are coming over and they're having much more kids. So they'll just replace the religion unless there's Christianity, Catholicism there to oppose it.
I've heard people speak to the idea that the liberal system is a death cult, and we even heard it in Parliament recently because of full-term abortions and the euthanasia bill. Peter Hitchens said this, and so did Danny Kruger, the former left Liberal Conservative MP, used to write David Cameron speeches. But I've seldom heard it put, in fact, I don't think I've ever heard it put that well before, that it's simply a cult of false idols, a death cult that's committing suicide, not just national suicide, but the death of its own destructive ideology. I think this is probably the clearest illustration of why the church forbids sin that I've ever heard from any young men at all. It's not because God doesn't like you having fun. It's because it destroys you.
Yeah, it's like living a Catholic life. At first, I was thinking that, well, these rules seem a bit, a bit harsh. But when you actually read it and you actually get to understand it, it's actually better for you. It's not just what God wants. It's to protect you. It's to save you. And it does actually make your life better. If people had only lived a Catholic life for 2 months, they'd realise how beneficial it is. And it's actually a better way to live your life.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's better for society. You should prioritise what's better for society rather than the individual enjoyment or the liberty of the individual. If everyone prioritised what was better for society, then society would be much better. But now liberalism, it's not about that. It's about the personal freedom. I want to do this and, this and this. And then now this is where we are. We're going off the deep end and it's not looking good.
The idea that there's anything more to life than searching for bargains, or as J.G. Ballard put it, the highest spiritual purpose of modern man is the search for a parking space. The idea there's anything more to life than that, I think it's not just astonishing at first, but when it sinks in, it's appealing to people, because the fact the liberal system has subtracted God from their lives has subtracted their meaning of their lives and its value. And this is the reason why they infuse their careers or the beliefs in the current thing like George Floyd or the so-called vaccines or the Ukraine war with an intense moral fervor that they don't deserve. And that's because they have these homeless moral passions, which are there because they've cut themselves off from God. Again, I've read a lot of theory and I've heard a lot of things about this, but I've seldom heard it put so well as you do. I think, honestly, inspirational. Exemplary young men, and it's an honor to have met you. Thank you again for coming.
Hi everyone, this is John Henry Weston for LifeSite News. We hope you found this video insightful. For more content like this, be sure to check out the links in the description below. You can also follow us on social media to stay updated on the latest news concerning life, faith, family, and freedom. Thanks for watching, and may God bless you.